Hola, hola, familia, and welcome back to Tech and Tequila, the podcast where we talk about the tech you need, the systems you build, the business you grow, and of course, the lifestyle that you're creating all along the way. Of course, with a little bit of tequila. I'm your host, Kat Lopez Shelby. And you know what? I really kind of want to get into the meat of today's episode because normally on this show, we're talking about cybersecurity, AI, communications, infrastructure, all the technology that keeps businesses connected and running. But today is about something even more foundational, and that is community. Because behind every business owner, every employee, every leader, is a child who once needed opportunity, safety, encouragement, and someone to show up for them. So, and we're going to do things obviously a little differently today, Familia. We're driving straight into the conversation, which means that the tequila will be waiting at the end of today. So for those who come for the tequila, don't worry, we'll have it. It's just later. Because this conversation deserves our full attention. And of course, I am incredibly honored to have Mr. Jim McNeese back, who is I would like to say the founder and the all everything for, of course, CETA. But for today's topic, McNeese Kids, a veteran-founded nonprofit dedicated to helping children live lives free from neglect, abuse, while ensuring access to the basic needs every child deserves: food, shelter, education, and of course, dignity. So, Jim, of course, welcome to Tech and Tequila.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again. I'm honored.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me today. You know, um, like I said, I just kind of want to dive straight in and get into everything about, obviously yourself, but more importantly about the McNeese Kids organization. And I know from hearing the story before that McNeese Kids um, didn't start kind of as like a usual, we'll say like what the way people normally start something, which is they get a business plan or they do this. This really started from the heart. So can you kind of tell me about how everything started? Give me the gist of the journey, like what that conversation looked like and all of the.
Sure. Yeah. Again, thanks for having me. The vision idea started 15, 16 years ago, which is hard to believe it's been that long. Having dinner with my two boys, Caden and Kel. And
Mhm.
at the time, they were 4 and 5. And I told them, hey, one day I would like to start a charity to help kids in need. And at 4 and 5, they have no clue what that means. So I explained to them, hey, there's some kids that are homeless, they're abused and neglected,
Mhm.
and some don't have food.
Mhm.
So one day I would like to start a charity to help them. So that the logo that we have, we actually did it that day. So we took out the art kit and did the heart for love, the cross for faith based,
Mhm.
and both the boys said, hey, can we put our handprints on there? So that the handprints are the two boys. That's kind
Aw.
of how it started. But
Mhm.
at that time is I went through a divorce,
Mhm.
and starting work and all that stuff and young kids, and I just didn't have time to start it. So about 6 years ago, I said it's time. The boys are at the house. Business is going well. So that's when we started our charity, and every year we do a golf tournament to raise the money.
I love that. I love it because it really gets to the point of impact. It doesn't necessarily start with like a strategy. It starts with the awareness and choosing that act of service, kind of the way that you talk about. Now, with you working with McNeese Kids, obviously you see things firsthand that we don't necessarily always see. So you're working directly with families and communities. What are some of the challenges that you see children in Texas are facing right now that most people just simply don't realize exist?
I think the biggest thing that I've noticed that this is a bigger problem than even I mean, I've been involved with it for 6 years, and it seems to continue to grow. We're not, we're helping in some areas, but then we have an increase in trafficking. So it's a bigger problem than any of us ever expected. So one, I'm trying to raise awareness for when people get involved. That's when it's an eye-opening experience, and you actually see these kids. So again, I think it's the increase of the issue is the biggest eye-opening for me.
Do you think that sometimes people just assume that like someone else is handling these issues and there's still like this need that is there that needs to be addressed? And I say through a multitude of different social services, right?
Yeah, 100%. I tell everybody the story years ago. I used to just stroke a check and donate money, thinking, "Hey, checkbox. I've done my need, or I've done my part to help others." Well, that's great, but I think that and awareness and getting people involved every day, I think that helps awareness, and that helps. That's a quicker way than just stroking a check.
Absolutely. It's great to become, I mean, obviously to volunteer for an organization like McNeese Kids or any of the ones that you work with, but to really see kind of what's going on, especially, a lot of times children sometimes kind of fall into the gap where they're not getting all the help necessarily that they need. Now, McNeese Kids helps provide essentials like food, clothing, shelter, and educational support. But impact obviously just isn't, numbers on a report. So, what does that real impact look like with maybe like you can give an example of a child or a family that receives help? Is there a moment or a story that has really stayed with you that you guys have helped with?
Couple. One, North Texas Food Bank was one of our charities that we fund because we're more of a financial arm, financial and um, people showing up. So volunteering your time. So those are kind of the two things. We don't normally donate to individual families. We do have a small portion of our proceeds. So 5% for grants that someone could come to us, but it's hard to do individual families because it's like, why'd you pick them? Why didn't you pick this family? So it helps us stay out of that. So they can't come back to us and say you're prejudiced, or you're helping a buddy or something like that. So um, recently we helped a family though that was referred to us by one of the charities. Single dad, 4 kids, living in a truck, and this was into November. So he was going to be in his truck during Christmas. So we were able to, with the grant money, put him in a hotel with him and his 4 kids, bought him a Christmas tree, got him some gifts, gave him some money for food, gift card for food. And he was able to get past that 4 week period that he was able to get in the housing. So that's one example.
No, and I think that's a real story of inaction. And obviously I like that, you did the grant, you helped them with a hotel and then, gift card to be able to purchase obviously necessities for their family, especially during the holidays. I mean, I Texas doesn't necessarily get that cold, but I can only imagine, for a child or someone that's unhoused, what that can look like and how scary that can be. And one of the things that I respect and I really like about what you said is, y'all are kind of more this, let's say, financial arm, right? The caveat to that, which I think is great, is that you're collaborating with other organizations. And we all know, like I've been on a board for a couple of different nonprofits. Everybody's always looking for someone to, lack of a better term, be that financial arm, right? You're not trying to reinvent the wheel. So why was that such an important part of your mission, like this collaboration and working with existing organizations?
There's a lot of charities out there that we found that doesn't necessarily put a lot of the money. So if I donate $100,000, 76% of it was going to the kids. So at 30%, 34% or 24%, was going to paying the CEOs or the staff, which the larger organizations, you do need staff, and not all of them could be volunteer. So we aligned with a couple of the charities that aligned with our mission, which, hey, majority of the money goes to the charity that, or to the kids, bottom line. So that's why we picked those two.
Yeah, and I mean that's all important, right? Is that when someone, let's say someone helps in some way, shape, or form, donates or volunteers through McNeese Kids, is that you guys are vetting those charities that, for lack of a better term, as as much of the financial that we're giving to them is going directly into the community, like directly into kids. So I
Yes,
love
ma'am.
that. Now, obviously, McNeese Kids operates as pretty much a fully volunteer driven organization, right?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
that means that people are showing up purely because they believe in the mission of what you guys are doing. What does leadership look like when, it's for purpose, and not profit becomes the motivation?
When we first started, we really didn't know what we were doing. We're trying to put it together, just like starting a business. We don't know all things, so we're just doing what we can. But as the years um, grew, or this is year 6, we've got some core people in that have, handled the volunteers that are more structured. And now when people come and volunteer, it's, hey, can we do this every month? So it's more intentional. People are raising awareness. They're telling other people about it. So we have a volunteer staff of probably 80 people now. I don't know if that does that answer your question? Sorry.
No, that really does, because I think what a lot of times people underestimate or maybe miss out on is that, you have to have purpose driven leadership, really, so that people can feel the authenticity and obviously have the desire to continue to show up to volunteer. And, like you said, it may start out as coming once, but then you're consistently have people that are coming and showing up and helping. And I think that's so important. Um, I also wanted to cover, and I know you kind of discussed this a little bit, but you guys have a grant program, obviously, that directly supports children experience crisis situations, kind of similar to what you were talking about earlier. You know, um, when you look at giving those grants out or helping that, where usually do those resources go, and what kind of requests usually stand out? Like, is it generally a situation like what you talked about where it's like this immediate need has to be like filled, and I don't personally have a huge amount of experience with this, but I know from hearing and talking with other people, like working with nonprofits with Shelby Tech and stuff, is that a lot of times there's all this red tape. And when someone's in an emergency situation, it's like, I can't fill all this out and I can't figure this out. So, what do you guys use to kind of determine where those resources go and what makes something stand out per se?
So we have on our website, we have a section that you could go in and fill out the information. It's, our biggest thing is, does it, will the money go to supporting kids? You know, this is where we get sticky because we help the Samaritan Inn, which is homeless. And obviously there's adults, but we specifically tell them this money isn't to feed the adults. This isn't to care for the adults. They have programs that strictly work with just the kids. So they have to have that line item to take our money. So um, individual families are a little bit tougher, and we haven't done that many, which is, I feel good about that. But if it's there, if we need it, um, but it's mainly like schools. We've had a couple schools reach out to us saying they need toiletry stuff for the kids. So we ordered that off Amazon. And anytime we give, like we did for the food, we give them gift cards so they can't, you know, it's easier or better to monitor.
No, no, and I like that, because I think a lot of people in the back end, let's just say, they really want to make sure that, when they're donating or when they're helping somebody, that it's going for the right things. But I really like the focus on kids and, you know, not per se to get too off subject with this, but I sat on a board for what used to be called Food to Kids in West Texas. And then was kind of like, for lack of a better term, swallowed up by West Texas Food Bank, where specifically they would put together like bag lunches that would be dropped off. And I know there's several different entities of this type of program around Texas for kids who otherwise may not get meals at like the end of the
Mhm.
evening or on the weekends. And so you're putting in like, macaroni and cheese and stuff like that. That's easy to go, through. Um, and I think, one of the things that that really speaks to is obviously that you're building, trust, and it's a strong foundation between obviously McNeese Kids, these organizations, and, obviously building stronger communities, because not that you want like a return on investment or an ROI on stuff, but anytime you help children, and I've heard someone talk about this, and I cannot think of his name, several times, that feeding kids, helping families, make sure they get their medical necessities is something where you get this huge return because you're helping somebody to better themselves in the long run.
Mhm.
Makes a good point. But yeah.
Yeah, and it starts with food. I mean, if you
Mhm.
don't get a good meal, how are you going to pay attention in school? So that's, again, that's why we use one of those pillars, because I believe those three are the most important.
No, exactly, exactly. And I think that is too. Now, many of our listeners obviously are entrepreneurs, small business owners, people like that. If someone is listening right now, feels called to help, but doesn't know where to begin, what realistic role do you see for them, like helping with an organization? Obviously, feel free to give your plug for McNeese Kids, but for any organization, like what you guys do.
Yeah, and every single town there's homeless shelters, there's food banks. Just walk up there and volunteer. And the thing is, I would call up there because it's harder than, like, you and I cannot walk up to the food bank on Friday and say, "Hey, we want to volunteer." You got to go online and you got to it's scheduled because they only take so many people. So it's an organized thing, which is good and bad. If somebody's willing to volunteer, you want to take advantage of it, but just plan ahead. um, but every single town needs help. Reach out to your local food banks, homeless shelters, abuse and neglect areas.
No, absolutely. And I like kind of what you were talking about, because obviously we could talk about, helping with the financial aspect. But, hey, maybe you can't do that. You can always volunteer your time. If you can't necessarily volunteer your time, if there's a particular nonprofit or something that you feel very strongly about, you can always post on social media or talk to it about it, because any of those things all help, right? Because
Yep.
nonprofits grow by word of mouth, and not having to put that expenditure into per se marketing and things like that as well. So
Yeah, I want to tell you one example real quick. It was last year, I believe it was last year. We all volunteered. I got some friends of ours to volunteer at the Samaritan Inn. So where we served the dinner to the families that lived there, and my buddy asked if he could bring his son, which is in ninth grade. He actually saw one of his schoolmates come through the line, and he said when he got home it really hit him hard that he had no clue. He goes to school with this kid and never knew that he's living in a homeless shelter. So I think even starting kids that young could get them thinking, hey, I'm grateful for where I am, but hey, there's more kids out there that we don't know. So how can I get involved and help out even at ninth grade?
no, absolutely. I love that point, because kind of what I was saying, like, you can always volunteer if per se you can't write a check, right? There's something that you can always do to help someone out and be of service to someone, right? But no, I
Don't
absolutely. Hmm?
I was gonna say even donate shoes,
Mhm.
clothing, bedding. So there's multiple ways of doing it.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. Now, of course, any organization, is going to have what success looks like, and it's going to be different for everybody. But when you look back, per se, at families you've supported and children that you help, how do you personally define success for McNeese Kids? Like, what does that look like for you guys?
That's a good question. There's a multiple things. One, success is to me every year I want to continue to make more money, raise more money. So we have done that since day one. Every year we've raised more, but actually seeing the kids themselves, seeing that some of them have made it out of the homeless shelter and now in college. We had a story that one lady, she was at a friend of our friend's party. She was actually went through Jonathan's place where she was abused and neglected. Now she's a nurse, and she was a nurse for one of our friends. So it just shows that these organizations, if you stick with it and support it, you can come out and be part of society and be successful.
No, I love that because that really goes back to the, you know, I don't really like the term return on investment, but it's that you're investing in someone as a person, which means that they're going to have the capability to go out and be a productive member of society, you
Yep.
know? And kind of like goes back to what you were talking about. Like, if you're hungry, how can you focus at school? How can you do good at school? So, absolutely, I love that. Now, of course, I would be, you know, not doing my due diligence if I didn't, ask you, like, we're gonna fast forward, let's say 10 years. What do you hope the legacy of McNeese Kids will be, not just as an organization, but in the lives of children, obviously, that we're talking about, kind of like what you were saying with that person, but the futures were changed because of it existed.
So I'm hoping to be able to set up some kind of foundation where the money's grows. So 10 years from now, I'm not starting at zero trying to raise $1 million from the interest alone that we have, that I can I can give $100,000 because that's the interest. So I want it to be self-funding. I would love to see that in 10 years. We're just now looking at that because not sure exactly legality. And again, all the money that we get from the golf tournament, by the end of December, I spend it. So we give the two charities, or the three in the past. We're narrowing it down to two now: Samaritan Inn and Johnson's Place, to have a bigger impact. So obviously, we told you we keep some for the grant, but at the end of December, if it's not used, we call Samaritan Inn and Johnson's Place, say, "Hey, I have 5 grand left. Can we use it?" So I try to deplenish that because the money in the bank's not helping a kid. So again, ultimately, I want to have a foundation built so it grows on its own.
No, I mean, to say I love that seems, I've said it like 4 or 5 times, but, I love the passion that you have behind that, and the idea is, like, you want it to grow so that you can have a more impact in people's lives, which is super important. So, you know, as we head into the tail end of this episode, for anyone who, like I said earlier, feels called, where is the best place for them to look to, like, donate or volunteer for McNeese Kids?
McNeesekids.org. And you can also send me an email, jmcneese@mcneesekids.org, and we'll introduce you to our volunteer coordinator.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, of course, Jim, for joining me today. Um, like I said, I love having you back. And, this is all in essence for the month of March. We have Podathon and we have all these things going on. But I love to highlight nonprofits, especially things where the impact is so high. And, like I said, obviously, when you're helping children, the importance of that. So I just want to thank you so much for joining me today. And did you have any final thoughts or anything that you wanted to add?
Just thank you again for having me on. You're doing amazing things. I love that you're spreading the word on your business and for charities. So thank you. You're doing an amazing job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now, first and foremost, I want to obviously say gracias to Mr. McNeese again for joining us today. You know, what he is doing is definitely some amazing servant leadership with McNeese Kids and is a huge help to the community, right? Because real community change happens when ordinary people choose to care consistently. And obviously, here on Tech and Tequila, before we close any episode, we like to slow things down because business may start with a conversation, but obviously, humanity finishes it. So let's pour out some tequila, right? So, Familia, as we end this episode, and we, want to send a great big shout out and a salute, obviously, to Jim McNeese and McNeese Kids. This is kind of where the title fades away, where we talk about the human behind the mission. So today I'm going to pour out a little Pantalones tequila. This has become one of my favorite, obviously, and this is the Extra Anejo Organic. It's a limited release. I don't know how many are left. I got mine at, Navidad at Christmas, and I absolutely love it. So for this one, first off, we want to take it. Remember what I said about tequila. It might have a little kick to it, but it's not supposed to burn. And this one definitely has kick, but definitely does not burn. It's smooth and it's delicious. When we think about this, so as we go through this, everyone gets this, right? I want you to think about this, right? As we take our first sip, I want you to think about what's something people see about your work, but don't always see about the weight that you carry. So maybe we'll call this is our tequila and reflection moment, right? Our tequila and reflection. So let's have our first sip. I hope you're enjoying your tequila at home. Maybe it's pantalones, maybe not. The second thing I want you to think is you've dedicated so much of your life to helping others, right? When things get hard, I want you to think about what keeps you going and how can you help other people keep going. So we're going to sip on that one too. And obviously, here on Tech and Tequila, we believe success isn't just about what you build, it's about the life that you create. So I want you to, obviously put in the comments, reply on the promo, anywhere that you want. What does a life well lived look like for you right now? I want you to think about that as you savor your tequila. So we're going to do a community toast before we leave. So before we close, we always raise a glass to something bigger. So who and what would you like to toast today? Think about that for a minute. Obviously, salud. Now, familia, here is your final reminder. Technology builds businesses, but people build legacy. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Tech and Tequila. Of course, I would not be doing my due diligence if I didn't say that you enjoyed the conversation today. We're going to have several more of these throughout March with some amazing nonprofits that are really helping, community as a whole. So please subscribe, share with a friend, because it all helps. Obviously, helps with the algo. In case you're on Threads, you know exactly. It's like, allo, help me here. Until next time, I want you to stay smart, stay secure, and of course, as always, take care of yourself and your community. Salud.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Tech and Tequila. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. To stay updated about all things tech and more, don't forget to visit us at our website, shelbyts.com. If you loved what you heard, remember to show your support by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our podcast. Your 5-star ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help us to reach more listeners just like you. So muchas gracias again for joining us with Tech and Tequila. Thank you so much. You learned a lot about tech, and maybe you had a nice drink of tequila.